by Mariposa Fernandez, an award-winning Bronx poet and artist, who's going to read some of her original poetry on Edgar Allan Poe's birthday here at the Edgar Allan Poe Cottage in Fordham on the Grand Concourse. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing your time with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. All right, so when I say Edgar Allan, you all say Poe. Edgar Allan
Poe.
Edgar Allan
Poe.
Edgar Allan
Poe.
I think I feel inspired. So, some fun facts that I came across while preparing for this reading. The two words that were among his favorite words and most frequently used in his writing are aghast and ghastly. And I love that. Aghast and ghastly. And he also invented the detective story, the genre that is such a popular genre today. How many people here enjoy detective stories or watch at least one show, if not currently, have been a fan of a show, a detective show? Yeah. What's the show?
Well, I used to watch a lot of them when I was younger. And I don't remember all the names, but they had a lot of them on television years ago.
Yeah, Perry Mason. Who remembers Agatha Christie? I'm totally dating myself. We do have a younger person here. What comes to your mind?
Well, House MD, because that's based on Sherlock Holmes in a weird way. So that always struck me as like an interesting version of the form. Really, all the different versions of Tatort, the German show, just because when I was learning German, we'd always have to talk about Tatort and how much of a phenomenon it was. Yeah, or just Law and Order, all of them.
Oh yeah, Law and Order. Dun, dun.
Yeah.
Which is very New York, right? There was one that Jill Scott was in, the female lady detective my mom loved. I can't remember the full title, but it was shot in Africa, and it's still on HBO. So I have a quote that, or a short poem actually, that Edgar Allan Poe wrote at the age of 14, and I found it in the New York Times archive in the time machine. I have sent for thee, holy friar, but 'twas not with the drunken hope, which is by agony of desire to shun the fate, with which to cope is more than crime may dare to dream, that I have called thee at this hour. Such, Father, is not my theme, nor am I mad to thee that power. Edgar Allan Poe at 14, which is, we could give finger snaps to the young Poe. And I'll just read this, also just citing the New York Times. The title of the piece is Tamerlane. The beginning of the title poem is Tamerlane and Other Poems, Boston, 1827. The book was published anonymously, credited to a Bostonian, and its preface states, the greater part of the poems which compose this title volume were written in the year 1821 to 1822, when the author had not completed his 14th year. According to the library, only 12 copies are known to exist. So I thought that was really interesting. And when I was growing up, my dad who was a lifelong, for most of his life, he sold furniture. And he worked there was a Siemens furniture store on Grand Concourse, and my mom would also take me and my twin sister shopping on Fordham Road, and I remember driving by Poe Park, and at that time it was, I don't ever remember, it wasn't like the era where my mother would take us to this park to play. It wasn't like safe, but I always wanted to come inside. So Poe Cottage had an award, and this is the first time in my life that I'm inside. So I'm so happy to be here and thankful to be here. And I learned about Edgar Allan Poe when I was in the 7th grade. So this is a letter to my younger self. This is a letter to little Maria, that's my given name. Little Maria at age 11 or 12. Dear Maria, it will be decades before you find out that the highly praised author of the story you are reading right now in your 7th grade language arts class is not who you think he is. Yeah, I know you've been told that he was a masterful writer, and yes, I know you love the way Miss G read The Telltale Heart. Pay attention to the way your hair stands up and how the cask of Amontillado ends. Theo would say, he may be a good storyteller, but he would also say, ese tipo Edgar Allan Poe no es buena gente. Married his cousin, and she died in the pandemic of his day. La prima se prime. But she was only a year older than you are now. 13. Yes, mamita, a child bride. Titiana would say, ay fo, que puerco, borracho, sucio. Pero nada. Right now, you've moved on from his stories and you're being assigned the Raven. In fact, you need to know this masterful writer of American classics who invented the detective story had the opposite view of other writers like Frederick Douglass and Mark Twain on the hottest topic of his time, slavery. Yes, mamita, don't be aghast. It is a fact that Edgar Allan Poe was against abolition. He didn't advertise that he was pro-slavery, but he did not hide it and was known to have said and did some ghastly things, including the brokerage of bondsmen on behalf of his slave-holding aunt. Whatever money he made, he drank away, most likely. Poe was quite a ghastly fella. It's not so much that these facts were not known, it's that the Board of Miseducation and Archdiocese wanted it to be taught that these writers were somehow divorced from the politics of their time, such as slavery and enslavement and other such crimes of humanity. Call it white supremacy if you will. Today is January 19th, Edgar Allan Poe's 124th birthday, and it is a rainy day in the Bronx, and you are somewhere in the year 1982 listening to Planet Rock. It's the show stop. I wish you could hear my voice, but I know you have enough things to freak you out. You will learn in due time. You will survive this whitewashed education. You will grow to be a great poet yourself. And what you learn, you will teach. Hang in there, kid. Love your older and wiser self. P.S. When Craig Jones pulls on your bra strap and yells, training bra, pull back, and with all your might, punch him dead in the eye. Thanks. Now I'd like to read Bronx Cicadas, which is a poem that's dedicated to my brother Al and the Boulevard. In the Bronx of my childhood, where we walked down the hill on East 213th Street, past the big old oak tree on the corner, diagonal from the old abandoned Victorian house on Carpenter, creepy chip, blue paint, fading watercolor against the sky, where the scary dog in the alleyway behind the gated fence barked at us each and every time, down to the boulevard, to the block, where all the colors in the world lived, where the green leaves hung low and luscious, where our hearts were never heavy, where the river smelled of its own muddy water, where it sparkled green like the Bronx River does, especially after rainy days. Murky brown, lime green, foamy circles, reflections of blue sky, the universe between the river and the boulevard, that boulevard in our Bronx playland, Bronx Park Boulevard, park of many playgrounds, Rosewood and Shoelace Park, park of the bocce courts where the old Italian men played wearing brown fedoras, crispy white shirts and brown pants held up by suspenders, park of the cobblestoned horseshoe that still stands, park of mystery morning dew on fresh grass, park of under the Williams Bridge spooky echo underpass that smelled of urine, where years ago before our time, weeping willows and scent of pine, where we gathered fallen leaves and acorns in the fall, pine cones in the winter, and dandelion wishes all summer long, where we chased fireflies and scraped our knees, where we watched fireworks explode in the black sky on the 4th of July, where we had snowball fights in our own winter wonderland, went sledding down the hill on 219th Street after being pulled for blocks by my big brother, my brother's park, where he hung out with his boys, where they broke night dreaming in the whispers of our river, on cold winter nights under stars and bare trees, standing on wooden benches above the packed snow, done gathered all the dead Christmas trees for smoky boulevard bonfires, burning old wood where new trees were sure to grow, dark winter nights soon to blossom into pink and white dogwood sunny spring sunrise with radiating glow, the constant river flow, and the humming sound of speeding cars on higher ground in tow, on the Bronx River Parkway. Zoom! Summer again. Sunny, hot, and hazy. Time for boom boxes and mixtapes in the park where the Boulevard Lions play touch football with their ripped jeans, curly froze, and long feathered hair flying in the wind, where we chased white buttercup butterflies and hung on the chain link fence as we marveled at the brothers playing basketball with their picked out froze, where we got pumped on the swings in the playground on 219, sailed on wooden seesaws, chipped yellow paint carved up fresh graffiti layups on concrete walls, climbed old school monkey bars, where we jumped rope, roller skated, ate rainbow Italian ices, ran wild through the sprinklers and played hopscotch, where my brother taught us how to ride a bike in the stomping grounds reveling of his youth, music of the boulevard, through the dog days of summer sun rays, where the sound of a Bronx summer's day rattled long and loud like mysterious maracas in the trees. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariposa.
He also acts, Poe acts as an agent for his aunt when she was selling a slave in Baltimore. He associates abolitionism with Boston, which he viewed as like this snobbish literary clique. And so he had this very unfortunately, it's very pro-Southern view, and kind of tends to denigrate anything associated, particularly in literature, with the transcendentalists and things like that. And partly it was a difference in literary theory. He didn't think literature should be didactic, it should just literature for literature's sake, as we would say today. And they hated him in turn. So interesting.
That's so interesting because he wasn't from the South, wasn't
No,
he?
he was. He's born in Boston, and his mother dies when he's very young. And she's performing in Richmond, Virginia at the time. And so he's taken in, and the father was David Poe, was a ne'er-do-well alcoholic that had left the family a few years earlier and who dies soon after. And he's taken in by the Allan family in Richmond, Virginia. And they were very wealthy merchants, tobacco merchants and slave traders. And the Allan mansion in Richmond, Moldova, was right next to where the slave market was in Richmond.
Wow.
So there's definitely a dark side to Poe. We might never know, but his biographer says that had he lived, he would have probably supported the Confederacy during the Civil War. And I've never read anything really to discount that.
And
But they're not plaster saints, which is always important to remember.
Well, he was also a contemporary of Mary Shelley, right?
Mary Shelley and
About
Harriet Beecher
Frankenstein.
and Harriet Beecher Stowe as well.
And she was sensational.
I think wrote in those years.
Is there any
I don't know that he. I don't know.
record of
I
him?
I don't know if she was that prominent
You said
then.
it talks about Percy Shelley.
Yeah, Percy Shelley he does. It's just
Oh, Percy
of
Shelley,
the poetry he liked.
her husband. He liked Percy Shelley.
Byron.
Yeah, he viewed himself as an American Byron, and initially he just wanted to be a poet. But he's disowned basically by his foster father John Allen, who never adopts him, and he loses the inheritance. And then he goes to Baltimore, where his family and where his aunt Mariah Clem lived, and that's when he starts to write the horror stories. He found he could make even a little money doing that, more than he could just writing poetry. In Tamerlane, they had I think the New York Public Library has one of the first editions. Like, they gave a talk at the Bronx Library Center when they had that book there, and they had someone from the New York Public Library give a talk on the edition they had of Tamerlane.
And so there's no record that you've come across where he shares his view of Frankenstein?
I don't know. No, I'm not certain. I'm sorry.
That would be interesting
Yeah, I
to
have to
see.
look into that. I'm laying the side down. I'm sorry.
That's okay.